Hey Zainab, we're just trying to get Joanne on here. Oh God. Zainab, can you see me? All right, let's try this one more time. Perfect. Yay! Oh my gosh, yay! I was so nervous.
Yay.
Oh my God, I'm sweating.
Of course it would be me, right?
Oh my God.
Of course it would be me.
Yay! We're all here.
How are you?
Oh, I'm gonna fix my little thing here.
I'm just going to adjust my tripod.
Oh,
I ended up switching devices.
oh, perfect.
Yeah. I
So
was
is it
on
another phone?
I have my iPad. I've got two
Oh, okay,
phones,
cool.
my laptop, and now my iPad because I was like, the technology gods never work in my favor. So here
Never, never agree. So I'm just glad that I made it here.
Oh.
And just give everyone another second to come on.
Sure.
Just going to fix myself also here.
That's okay. I got everything, and it's so funny. I was so nervous. I got everything prepared beforehand because I was like, I need to have everything in front of me should something go awry.
Yeah.
So I'm like a Girl Scout, always prepared.
But it's all good.
Here we are.
Here we are.
Together.
Here we go. Okay. Well, you know what? Let's just start. And oh, Crystal, I'll jump back on and listen. Okay. All
Thanks, Crystal.
right. My friend Crystal, actually one of the speakers.
I remember Crystal from back in.
Oh, RGM.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I don't think we ever met though. I have emailed with her, and I believe we have corresponded, but I've never met her in the flesh. So.
Well, look at how my world.
Everything's coming together.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, yep. Why don't we start this off? And hello to Joanne and Crystal, who's in here, and all the RGM people that
We're all sticking together.
we're gonna get started. I'm very excited, as always, to have Joanne with us today, and we're going to be talking about mental health among the Black and Caribbean community, her dealings with anxiety, and the dealings she's had with your pregnancy and your birthing experience, all of this good stuff.
All the tea. We're spilling all of the tea today.
So why don't I stop talking so you can tell your story?
Okay, well, I mean, where do I begin? I think, you've gone with a list of questions, so I'll just start from those. And the very first one, which was a doozy, but it's really sort of interesting to answer. What has it been like living with anxiety throughout your life? I didn't actually realize that I had anxiety until I was probably in my 40s, late 30s, early 40s. So actually, just after I had my daughter. So I was 39 when I was pregnant And in my early 40s, maybe 40, 41 is when I finally got diagnosed, because there were a lot of other things happening. So I was always a very nervous, anxious, easily upset child. And a lot of people attributed it to being an only child, and never having anyone to play with, never having anyone to toughen me up. I was always really sensitive. A lot of things kept me awake at night. My poor little 8, 9-year-old brain just working overtime. I was afraid of a lot, afraid of everything. And I just always figured that's how I was. Getting into sort of later elementary and early high school, I had to deal with my sensitivity by sort of constructing this really tough armor.
Yeah.
So I would say that late elementary, I was a bit of a bully, I'm not going to lie, because I had the power of my words. And that was the other thing that got me through a lot of things. I journaled a lot, I wrote a lot, and I knew that one day I was going to be a writer slash journalist, something to do with my words. So I'd say around 12, 13, I discovered that the way to deflect my own inner angst was to take what I noticed about people's insecurities and sort of project it back on them through
Mm.
words. So words were my weapon, probably not the best use, but when you're younger, you go into survival mode when you're in certain situations. High school's a write-off. We don't even want to talk about high school. So you've got high school angst for any typical teenager, and then dealing with anxiety and depression again, not really knowing what that was, just thinking I was like this melancholy emo kid before emo even had a term. A lot of my journals, pages and pages and pages of just existential.
Oh, girl, I hear all the
And you throw into that mix skinny as a rail, braces, acne, and may I add a jerry curl, made for some great times
yeah.
for for an awkward kid in high school. But I mean, really, all my life. And when I think about every stage and how I was affected, according to the timelines and the trajectories of what you're supposed to be experiencing at certain ages, everything for me was heightened by the fact that I had anxiety and I had depression. Didn't even realize it until I was much, much older, which makes me sad, I think, in a lot of ways, because your mental illness and lack of mental health can really suppress who you were meant to be.
Yeah.
When you have no belief in yourself,
Yeah.
when you're feeling down, when you believe the things that people say about you, it really affects everything. And it only takes, especially when you're a teenager, it only takes one or two incidents um, to really shatter your self-esteem and how
Yeah.
you feel about yourself. So I spent the better part of the last 2 decades really just trying to keep my head above water, outwardly appearing very happy, very outgoing, but knowing that there were a lot of things inside me. And the first inkling I got that I might be depressed is, I remember I put up this little meme on a blog, one of several blogs I had, and it was a patient talking to a doctor, and I can't remember the punchline, but my caption underneath it was, I relate to this. Sometimes I feel sad and I don't know why. Other times I'm happy and then I'm sad again. What's wrong with me? And my friend Branka was like, sounds like you have depression. And I was like, no. Black people don't get depressed. We get mad for a minute and then we move on. But as I got older, as I said, and then having my daughter, and then being diagnosed with a thyroid condition, which also contributed to a number of my emotional outbursts, my mania. It was just, yeah. So that it's been a roller coaster. It
Yeah.
really, yeah.
I I feel you on, and I just want to go back to what you said about suppressing who you really are, because
Mhm.
at that point you were suffering and you know how to deal with it. So therefore you were suppressing. That's such a good way to think about it. And because I felt that way too when I was dealing with my anxiety, is that, you know, I kind of suppressed, well, I did suppress who I was. And that is such an eye-opening way to say that. So thank you. Um, Give us a little bit of insight into the birth of your daughter and just, yeah, who is adorable, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, just give us a little bit of insight into that. I don't want to say process, but your experience during that, because I know that it was definitely something for you.
Yeah. Just to go back to something too that I failed to mention in that whole suppression thing, which also ties in with my daughter. Um, in the Black and Caribbean community, it's almost, attitudes are changing now, but there's still a lot of stigma around mental health and about expressing certain kinds of emotions and feeling certain ways. And really, too, especially when I was younger, the guilt around feeling sad when I had so much around me. My parents came from the Caribbean, um, and came here and made a life, bought houses, got jobs, did all these wonderful things. Sort of, the the immigrant dream, the immigrant tradition. And you make something, this stigma that I wasn't allowed to be upset. What do I have to be upset for? I've got a roof over my head. I've got parents who love me. I've got food on the table. I have my choice of education. I can do anything I want, be anywhere I want. My country is not at war. Like, all of these things that are foisted upon you when
Yeah.
you have this sadness. So that was also why I had to suppress, because it wasn't, no one could relate to me. I wasn't allowed to be upset. How dare I be upset when my
Yeah.
parents had done all and sacrificed all to give me this wonderful life,
Yeah.
right? And not for a second was I being ungrateful. It's just that for the life of me, I couldn't figure out why they were right. I had all these wonderful things. Why was I still sad? You know? So there is that. So tying into the birth of my daughter, um, what had happened somewhere around my late 30s is I developed IBS. And that was my first inkling into mental health, mental wellness, that kind of thing. And I remember, I'll never forget the initial consult with my naturopath, talking about why I might have IBS. Have I always had stomach issues, which I always have, which are interconnected? As you know, anxiety, depression, your gut and your mind work in conjunction.
Mm,
So getting to the
yes.
root of that, and I remember she asked me, "When's the last time you cried, Joanne?" And I was like, "What?" She's like, "When's the last time you cried?" I was like, "Cry? What? Why?" She's like, "What do you mean, why?" I said, "Why would I cry?" She said, "Why wouldn't you?" And I remember having this moment, and we're just kind of looking at each other. She's looking at me like, "What's wrong with you?" And I'm like, "What are you asking me?"
Yeah.
So suddenly I said, "I don't cry. Like, we don't cry. Crying doesn't help anything. You cry for something, it doesn't change it. You're still crying. So what's the point?" And she said, "Crying is your body's way of releasing emotions and tension and toxins. When's the last time you cried?" And I couldn't remember. I was very angsty, but not very weepy. Um, and then she said to me, "What is your cultural thought or your cultural ideology around crying?" I said, "That's a very interesting question. I wasn't allowed to cry."
Wow.
The mantra was, "Don't cry, or stop crying, or I'll give you something to cry for." You get a
Wow.
little smack on the butt or whatever. So it was really, there was a lot of suppression around,
Mhm.
seeming ungrateful or being unhappy when seemingly you had all these things to be happy about. So fast track now to being pregnant with my daughter. Um, my IBS kicked in, my gut health again. So I had IBS, and then living in Montreal, I was also diagnosed with idiopathic gastroparesis, which is a complete shutdown of your gut due to stress, due
Oh
to
my God, I have not heard of that.
Look it up. Idiopathic gastroparesis. It usually happens in diabetic patients. And then in about, I'd say, maybe even less than 10% of cases, there's no known cause. And doctors believe that it's attributed to stress. So my living in Montreal, which I did for 2.5 years, was another set of mental mental anguish. But we're talking about my daughter. So, whew, got pregnant, and got my daughter's diagnosis of Down syndrome. And I remember the day that we met with the geneticist to finally confirm this. And the way she broke it to us was as an abortion cell. So here you are, two worried new parents. We had an inkling that something was wrong because we took pre-screening tests, and they said there are certain markers that your baby shows that might indicate she has Down syndrome. So we're going to send you to the geneticist at North York Hospital, and you're going to go through a battery of testing, and then we'll get back to you. And a week later, that was in September, so in a week later, we got the confirmation, and we were called in to discuss our options or how we were going to proceed. So I was like, okay. So we're sitting at this table, shell-shocked parents. Yes, there's a confirmation of Down syndrome. And she went right into the ways we could go about terminating the pregnancy.
Oh my God.
Like, you can have a DNC, you can have a chemical abortion, you can have what's called a number of different types of ways. And I looked at her and I said, what makes you think that I'm terminating this pregnancy? And then she was like, I'm so sorry. And started backpedaling.
Oh my gosh.
And I was just like, WTF. So then she was talking about, the prognosis of life for my child, my unborn child. So my 18-week-old fetus. She's already said to us, well, there are a lot of complications that are involved with Down syndrome. Your child may never walk. She may never talk. She may never go to school. She may never learn. She may never go to college. And just like a dire prediction for this little wee bean. And I said to her, don't you think that my daughter's abilities are going to be a matter of nature versus nurture? That if we help her in every stage, that she might not grow up to be this amazing person. And so what? She didn't go to college. I never graduated college. Her father didn't graduate college. She may never be a rocket scientist. I'm not a rocket scientist. And let me tell you something.
Like, amazing people that did not go to like college, like, you can be
right.
Sorry.
That's it. And then I remember she said to us, she may never work, but if she does, she'll be something like a Walmart greeter. That's the most you could ever expect of her. I kid you not. And I said to this woman, let me tell you something. There is no shame in having a job. And if my daughter grows up to be a Walmart greeter, then let me tell you, she is going to be the best damn greeter that Walmart has ever had. And I am going to be proud of her regardless. And how dare you? How dare you?
I can't believe that someone would actually say that.
Lost my damn mind. So by the time we got down to the parking lot after this disastrous, horrible meeting, I was fuming. And my boyfriend at the time, my daughter's father, went to get the car. And by the time he came back, I was struck with such intense pain in my abdomen. And I thought, oh my God, am I doubled over pain? Am I having a miscarriage? What's going on? So the pain continued, and it turned out that my gastroparesis had a flare up due to stress. Like, it kicked in. My body went crazy.
Well, that was a stressful situation.
And I ended up in hospital for a week.
Holy shnikes.
So that was the Friday, was the diagnosis and the meeting with the very mean geneticist. By Sunday night, I was in the hospital. I spent my birthday, my 39th birthday, I spent in the hospital. and alone. And I remember a lot of crying because, you know, now I had been coached to the point where I could cry. And I am not very religious. I am spiritual. I do believe in definitely a higher power. I have never prayed for anything as fervently and as desperately as I prayed for the life and health of this little girl. Because not only was I in the hospital, I was now on a morphine drip to control the pain. And when I talk about pain, my eyes would cross. I couldn't even hear what anybody was saying. I felt like I can't even describe it. So, um, and that was around the time fentanyl was beginning to make the rounds as well. So out of the hospital, they were talking about putting me on fentanyl. And I did my own research and I was like, this is a class A narcotic. There is no way.
Good for you.
So wound up back in the hospital 3 or 4 times after this. Subsequent, again, you know, different pains, different things. Um, in a position with my daughter's father where we had been on the verge of breaking up when I got pregnant. And so battling with him,
Yeah.
dealing with this difficult pregnancy, I had already made my peace with the diagnosis. You know, there were multiple appointments, cardiologists, sonograms, ultrasounds, pokes, prods, and really just spending like the last 4 months of my pregnancy crying, and not out of pregnancy hormones, out of fear, out of worry. And it wasn't that I was worried about her diagnosis. I had made my peace with it. I'd done my research. I'd done my journalistic due and realized that, hey, I could handle this. Down syndrome, I got this. But it was how the world was going to treat her, and a lot of worry around bullying, a lot of worry around abuse. Just, you know, your mind, the anxiety, your mind
Oh
takes.
yeah.
So made it to the end of my pregnancy. It had been determined that I was going to have a cesarean section because my little girl was standing on a very large fibroid on my left side and was breech. And she wasn't, babies can be born breech, but the size of the fibroid made it very difficult for the passage of.
I came out ass first, FYI. So
Well, my daughter literally feet first. She was
sorry, I
she'd be like,
important story. And I'm crying through this, but keep going.
that's okay. So the day she was born, I remember they told us to come into the hospital at 1. And we went into the hospital at 1, and I'll never forget this because I have a selfie. There's a selfie of me, and I remember I'd done my makeup and I braided my hair. And if you remember, I had long dreadlocks at the time because I was like, okay, so we're going to have a before baby and after baby selfie, and it's going to be cute, and we're going to post it. The irony, I'm sitting there with my makeup and my braids, and I'm like, because at 4 o'clock or 2:30, we were going to go in and have this baby. And I was like, bada bing, bada boom, it's going to be great.
Right out.
Yeah, things that nobody tells you.
Yeah.
Went into the operating room, the OR, got my epidural, which wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. But about, say, 10 minutes into the procedure, just after the. Oh, yes. And Zainab, hi, Z. Zainab mentions there's a pop, and that's the disconcerting thing about having a cesarean section. There is a visible pop in your back. Anywho, um,
I'm so excited.
about 10 minutes into the surgery, I get this massive headache. Like, just blinding migraine. And I say out loud because it's so, like, it's shocking and it's sudden. And I'm like, I have a headache. And my OBGYN, Dr. Friedman, got to give her a shout out. She's like, what kind of headache? And I was like, a really bad headache. And she's like, okay. And then all of a sudden I can't breathe.
Oh God.
And I'm like, now I can't breathe. So I start coughing. I start struggling to breathe. I try sitting up, and they're telling me not to move because they've got me cut open. They're trying to take out my baby. My poor boyfriend at the side is like, what the hell is going on? And I remember this as clear as day. I am like but not because I'm hyperventilating. I can't get any air and I'm coughing. So this is a new thing. I'm coughing, my head is splitting. I can't breathe. I turn to my boyfriend. He's got my hand. He's like, it's okay, it's okay. I say to him, I'll never forget this. I said, don't let me die.
Oh my gosh.
Do not let me die. And then somewhere in the commotion, somebody pulled out a baby, showed me a baby, and I got it together for like maybe a minute to go, oh, there's my baby. Okay, back to dying. And vaguely remember them talking about she's not breathing, something else. They whisked her away, and then my memory's kind of fuzzy from there. Um, I was separated from her for about 24 hours, 48 hours.
Oh.
So her dad got to do all the first feed, the first bath, the first everything. They taught him everything in the hospital. And I'll give it to him. He somehow managed, I don't know if he slipped a nurse of 50 or whatever, and got the little bassinet and wheeled, because I was in ICU. She was in NICU and I was in ICC, sorry, intensive critical care, not intensive care. So I was in the CCU and she was in the NICU. So he managed to smuggle my baby down. And I have this video of me and I'm hooked up to all of these things. I've got oxygen, I've got monitors, I've got all kinds of things. And my voice is still raspy and I still can't breathe fully. And he brings the baby in the bassinet and I'm just like, oh my God, there's my baby. And I'm holding this baby in all these tubes. And there's, you know what, Erin, honestly, there was so much to this story that I'd be here just talking about my birth story alone. But I can say that her birth, the 2 subsequent days in the hospital, and then navigating new motherhood and fluctuating hormones, and then eventually developing this thyroid problem really contributed to a huge void mentally.
Yeah.
Because there are things that I absolutely do not remember. I'd say within the first 3 weeks, I think I remember nothing. I honestly remember nothing. And when the memories start picking up of my daughter, there's one around 18 months. I don't remember her first words. I don't remember the day she walked. I don't remember her first potty. I really don't remember any of it. Yeah, and not even like foggy memories. No memories. So I have no memories of my baby. Thankfully, I was into pictures,
Yeah.
and we weren't even on Instagram then. Funny enough, but I was just like remember taking a lot of pictures. So sometimes I still do go through snaps, as all moms do, but sometimes they go to relive the memories. I go to see if I can trigger any memory. So
Wow.
I'd say I started having concrete memories probably around 3.5, 4. But even then, I don't
Cool.
remember a lot. Um, Recently, I'd say within the year, I, which goes into the next question, which is what made me make space for mental health. And it was all of those things. Trauma of my daughter's birth, the trauma of dealing with things that I didn't even recall. And I think suppression is long lived for me. When I think about experiences that have popped up and fairly innocuous incidents that have triggered them, and I realize that there's a lot that I have suppressed. So I made space for it because I was getting to a point. My brain, I wasn't remembering things, I was unhappy, and like just a fog, a gloom. Um,
Okay, so I think there was some technical difficulties. I'm sure Joanne will be back. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Let's Jam Programs. Thanks for saying hi. Morgan is here. Sweet Time Comms is here. Thank you for taking the time. And if you guys have any questions about Joanne's story as we go through it, please be sure to make a comment, ask a question, and we will answer those questions in this talk. She's also actually one of our speakers for the soul sessions that will be coming up, so you can hear the rest of her story as well there. So she's actually come back on. 1 second. There we go. Okay. This is this is COVID times. This is going live, you know. We gotta do what we gotta do.
Oh my goodness.
Yep,
So,
you were
um,
so back to
just gotta roll with it. What I was going to say,
oh, and make sure your mental health.
right. With my magazine, I ran a magazine a number of years ago, ran myself to the ground. The most thrilling, awesome experience of my life, but completely neglected my health for 4 years. So by the time it ended, I had complete burnout, depression. Like I was in a funk for a year and I had no idea. I just thought, I'm tired. I haven't been sleeping for the last 4 years. This is what it is. But it also developed a bit of a condition and I was medicated for it, which was great because it helped with the pain. But again, nobody was really diagnosing me with
Yeah.
anything. So fast forward now, I made space for mental health because the chest pain started coming back. And now
Mm,
that I'm in my mid 40s, people start to think about stroke, heart attack. They take it a little more seriously. So I was in and out of the hospital maybe 4 or 5 times last year when I was like, you know what, this is enough. This is enough. I'd quit smoking as well. So there were things
good.
that I was doing for my health. And my doctor said, you know what, maybe you should see someone. And at that point, I was like, why not? Why not? So I started seeing a therapist and just uncovering. It's amazing how one thing can just snowball. And I remember it was our first session was supposed to be an hour, and she's writing furiously, and she's looking at the clock, and she's writing, and she's like, "I have another meeting, but it's not that serious. I'm going to cancel because you and I have a lot of work to do." And bless her, because she's wonderful. I think she's hilarious and she's funny, but she's also just helped me realize how much of my existence has been centered around a lack of support for my mental health, right? Without even knowing. And this is not to assign blame to anybody, but really just talking. My poor West Indian parents who never really thought about depression and anxiety as anything but something that afflicted white people. And that's a common sentiment, right? Because apparently Black people, we're resilient, we're built for oppression. No, we're not. We're human beings, and you can shoulder as much of a burden as you want to, right? But generational traumas are real.
Yeah.
So unpacking all of that, unpacking things that I thought I'd put away, like sexual abuse, sexual assault, um, dealing with racism and discrimination, right? All of
Mhm.
these things um, just coming to manifest themselves in my health, through my gut, in my chest pains, in my anxiety and depression, and my bones, my joints. And really, I just thought that, hey, I'm in my 40s, I'm supposed to ache.
Mm.
And going to see an OT, and she's like, well, when did all this start? I said, when I turned about 40, because I used to dance, I was very active, I'd work out. Um, I'm not an active person, but I like my activities. So I had them all. And then I figured because I'd had my daughter, everything stopped. So I was like, okay, well, I'm in my 40s now. And she's like, no, you hurt because of trauma.
Wow.
Blew my mind. Blew my mind. I'm like, what do you mean?
Said that, was it the therapist or your doctor?
My therapist, sorry. So I had gotten recommended to a therapist who then also recommended me to an occupational therapist. So
Right.
she's trying to figure out what the source of the pain is because, you know, I'm not a basketball player, I'm not a football player, soccer player, I don't do any repetitive stress, anything. So really getting to the root of that and then learning some of my mental health background. And I remember her writing too and looking at me and she's like, that's trauma.
Well, I
Like,
guess you're holding in all of this anxiety and pain and depression, not to, and not crying. It's not, there's no release for you. So your body is just like this for
yeah,
however long. Seems like a long time.
yeah.
And yeah, like holy crow.
Yeah, I am unable to get a massage because right here, like this is where they start. This is permanently. I realize too that my shoulders are usually up, and I have to remind myself to drop my shoulders because I'm usually here. I vibrate on this frequency. I didn't even realize this is usually where I am, so it's a conscious reminder, conscious reminder to keep my shoulders down. But I've tried to go for massages, and it's just way too painful. There is way too much of whatever it is. And again, me just going, yeah, I just have tight muscles. Maybe I worked out too much, but I haven't worked out in 6 years. Like, let's be serious. So, what is happening? So, my body has been the alarm. My body sounded the alarm and said, listen, chica, you need to get your shit together. Sorry. You need to get yourself together um, and work on your health and unpack some stuff because you've got a lot going on. And whether you want to admit it or not, you need help. And it was a place of resignation for me because it was almost like, okay, well, I've tried everything else. And I think to the realization, and this is hard for me to admit out loud, but I can say it, is that I got to a point one day where I just wanted the noise in my head to stop. And suicidal ideation is also not something that Black folk are comfortable talking about because it means you've quit, you've given up, right? But I
Mm,
got to a point, I remember I was looking in the medicine cabinet and I had allergy medication because that's the other thing. Through my anxiety and my gut not working, I developed a number of food allergies and sensitivities. So I'd eaten the wrong thing and I was itchy. I was tired of being itchy. I was tired of being tired. I was tired of just the noise. I was tired of the mood fluctuations, like all these things, tired. And I had gone to get my Benadryl. And I remember looking at the bottle. I was like, you know, I could drink this whole thing right now and there would be quiet because that's all I wanted in my head was just, it wasn't necessarily the outward battles, it was the inward battles, right? So I was
yeah.
fighting one battle outside and I was fighting a much bigger battle inside. And that's too, that was also what sought me to get help because that's the first time. And I looked at it and I was like, hmm, and sort of put it back on the counter, not as a stop that, but as a okay, well, you know it's there if you need it. And then I was like, you have a daughter, and there are things that you need to consider before you off yourself. So maybe we should work on what's causing these thoughts and feelings. And so I started going to therapy. So, yeah. And I've been very upfront about it with my parents. Well, my mom, my dad is hardcore old school, will never accept. He's like, I don't. My dad's remedy for everything is alcohol. So
Mm.
you don't drink enough rum. You're depressed. You don't drink enough rum. Alcoholism gallops on my dad's side of the family, so let's not get into
Oh,
as well. Um, so I had to find my own outlets and talking to my mom and just kind of letting her in on some stuff. And I'm an only child, so I don't care whose parent it is. When your child comes to you and says, you know, I think I might want to jump in front of a bus. I think I might want to, you know, drink a whole bottle of Benadryl. I think I just want to sleep the sleep of 1,000 sleeps and never wake up. I don't care how old school or how that's your child. So having this experience has really helped my mom come around to certain things so I can talk to her. And there are times when, with everything, especially going on lately, I really removed myself from the news. Um, and it hurts because my journalistic instincts kick in and I want to write about things and I want to editorialize things and I can't because everything is just so heavy. And having a conversation with my mom the other day, and I just had to cover my eyes and remind myself to breathe. And I said, Mom, I can't process all of this. I'm having such a hard time. So and I know I'm not the only one,
Mhm.
right? Um, Talking to my Black friends, especially. And it's been interesting because I have a lot of white friends, really good people, earnest people who want to help and unlearn, who
Yeah.
are dedicated to the cause and understand that this process means that if they are about Black Lives Matter, then some of their white counterparts are going to disown them. And they've really just been on board with that. It's like, you know what, didn't need them in my life anyway. So I've felt really supported during this whole movement. So I've been conflicted because then there's a whole level of guilt, weirdly enough, that's been happening with me because I have Black friends, rightfully so, who are angry and tired and fed up of
Mhm.
the institutions that have been set up to keep Black people and brown people down and oppressed and all of these things and cops and everywhere you go, living in this skin has just it's been a lot. So I have Black friends who want nothing to do with white people. And I get it. I get it. There's no buts, no ifs, I get it. My reality is slightly different. And I'm upset at the world. And I'm upset of my feelings of anger. And I'm upset because I don't want to get to a point where I hate white people. My daughter is half white. My daughter is half Black. My daughter's half of me and she is half of her father. And I don't want to get to a place. And it's been hard because now all the stories are coming out of the woodwork, right? There are a lot of things that people have kept suppressed and like, this is our time. And putting their stories on the table. Hell, I have my own stories, which is another thing that you're dealing with. A friend of mine said very, very succinctly, he's like, it's bringing up a lot of things that I thought I'd gotten over and put away. So, I don't know if you're familiar with the Sasha Exeter Jessica Mulrooney saga.
I did see that. I did see that.
Mm-hmm. I have a very similar story. Very, very similar. I have a friend who I think is watching now as well, put up a meme about how many Black journalists put their careers away, let their journalistic dreams die because they were told that newsrooms didn't have enough space for more than one Black journalist. Oh, well, we've already got a Black person covering a beat. We don't need another one. And so Black journalists, so many of them I know, none of them, very few of them, I should say, are working in the field, right? And that also got me because I was blacklisted very quietly, and not realizing what had happened. But,
Right.
my own dreams put aside. So dredging up a lot of these things and being in college and professors and just all of the stuff that, I said to my boyfriend, not my daughter's father, I have a wonderful, supportive boyfriend. I said to him, it's one thing to live life as a Black person, prior to this pandemic, this racial pandemic, where things would happen to you. You go home, you vent to your significant other. You guys have a good cry, a good hug, a good session where you're like, okay, we're gonna get through this. And you brush it off, and then you go to work tomorrow, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna deal with it. Whereas now, it's just like every time you're getting knocked down, right, you want to get back up, there's another story, and you support your brothers and sisters because they're going through the same crap. And it's been a lot. It's been really, really hard, and it makes you realize how awful things have been for a particular group of people, and even myself being Black, right? Like when you really get into the roots and the history of what is going on in this world and why things are set up the way they are. It just, I can't absorb anymore Black Lives Matter news, not because I don't care. I don't have the capacity. Um, and that's been difficult for me because there's so much I have to say, so much I want to say, and thankfully there are people out there who can articulate it so beautifully and eloquently and passionately and powerfully. So
Which
all I can
I think you're doing right now, to be
thank
honest.
you, thank you. I can speak it, I just can't make it come through my fingertips, right? Where I think that um, my written word has always been my thing and has always been my salvo, and I can't right now. And I feel like I'm failing myself. I feel like I'm feeling people who can't speak up because they're in jobs where if they dare to say something, they might feel like they might lose their jobs, or they're just in a position where they don't feel they have the voice or the power. So that's been difficult for me because I'm like, this is your moment. This is what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to be talking to the world through your words. And I get to the keyboard and my fingers fail me. So that's been hard. Um, yeah, it's been,
Well, I do really appreciate you, and I think that what you have said and the passion and the sincerity and the love for people, and yeah, I think I'm just very thankful, and I I don't even have words. Is
yeah,
just want to I I want to be able to facilitate um, really supportive and compassionate um, talks about mental health and racism, and being able to have make people realize that. And I know it might sound weird, but I believe that everyone has a heart, everyone has a soul, and we're human. And I know that everyone has that experience or different experiences. But if we could just all respect each other, start now. And I know there's a lot of need to go through. And
if I
please tell,
may.
yeah,
um,
yeah,
I said this in another panel that I was on. And this is nothing on you, Erin. It's just the why can't we all just love and get along and be one is really a perspective of privilege, because you, and this is not to discount that you may have experienced your own form of discrimination or prejudice,
yeah,
but really at the end of the day, I don't think non-racialized people, non-black people can really understand how trivializing those kinds of statements can be,
yeah,
because I wake up every day and I'm black. And it's not something I wear as a chip. It's just I'm black every damn day, right? And when you say all people have a heart, all people have a soul, I can tell you from some of the things that I know that have happened to people, there are some people who only have a heart if the outward shell matches their own.
right.
Um, so my thoughts on that is, let's just all accept that we're all racist and prejudiced in some way. And this is going to be my mantra. And unlearn where we learned or how we learned these biases, these prejudices. Someone said to me something the other day that was just like, wow, so offensive. But I realized he doesn't know any other black people but me. So his perception of black people is based on media, stereotypes, things that he's consumed. Right. So it's a nice sentiment to say let's all live together and be as one. But the fact of the matter is it's just not going to happen as long as the systems that benefit you and hinder me still exist. I had a sad thought the other day. I was like, what would be so bad if Black folk could just have what white folks have? What would be so bad if I could just walk into a bank and say, hey, I'd like a $10,000 loan for my small business? What is the worst that could happen if I walked into a Mercedes dealership and said, hey, I want to buy this 2021 E-Class? And someone said, hey, let's go for a test drive, and not, can you afford this? Not to have my worth scrutinized and assessed as soon as I show up. So I Erin, I've known you for years, and I know what a wonderful, giving, loving person you are. So I can't scold you. I can just correct and let you
I,
see even that well-intentioned entreaty is still just like, you know what I mean?
I am trying to unlearn because I am a blonde, blue-eyed,
Wide white woman.
white privileged woman, and I have lived kind of in this bubble, and I'm trying to unlearn, and I think it's it's interesting because I've always, and I think I've said this previously, but I've always had rose-colored glasses, and you know thought in my mind that not necessarily everyone was treated equally, but like I just love everyone, and not really thinking about
But
what
it's
they're.
also okay to admit that you don't love everyone, right? Like, right?
Yes, yes.
Deep,
It's all okay.
deep.
This part I'm not very fond of, but for the most
Deep.
part,
It's okay.
yeah, for the most part, like personally, I try to treat everyone with respect and love and compassion, but I know that that's not everyone's experience, and I know that because I came from a small town, and I think that I maybe had two Black kids come to our school, and I had never really. When I came to Toronto, that was the most multicultural I had been in, like I had experienced, and it's so eye-opening because I got to learn about a bunch of different cultures, but also learning of the racism that is around, and just the it's hard. I don't even know. I have no words, but I am glad that people are starting to realize and starting to unlearn, and hopefully we take this further, and this is going to change the world, because it's not fair, and I know that I've said some stuff that probably was offensive, and I didn't even realize it, because that's just how, like, my prejudice, or like how I've grown up. And I want, like, and I feel awful because I just didn't even realize it. And yeah, so I really hope that we start to see things differently. And I just want to take Let's Jam programs. This dialogue is so necessary. Yeah, thank you for listening, guys. If you
Yeah,
guys have, I think it's very, it is good dialogue for people. And I don't know actually how much time we have on Instagram Live, but we did start later, so I think it's an hour and a half. Anyways, whatever. If it turns us off, let it turn us off.
okay.
um but yeah, I think for especially me, I have been trying to figure out how to unlearn my behaviors, and stating that I'm like a white, blonde, blue-haired girl from a small town.
You are the cliche of white folk. Wow.
I know. Oh, woo. Anyways, I like are lots of people like me who don't know what to feel awful, and just want to learn and want to be better and want to change. So I think that we need to start having these conversations. Like, I'm not going to lie, I'm slightly sweaty because I'm like, I,
I'm going to tell you something. And I think I
yes,
told you we had a chat last week about today and then this whole session upcoming. Get used to the idea of being uncomfortable.
right.
Get used to it, because you know what I find interesting is even watching you, and it happened on the panel that I was on last week. It was two Black women, myself and another speaker, and then one white woman who had adopted a biracial baby. And the level of nervousness that she exuded in falling over herself, trying to ensure that she didn't say anything awkward or, oh no.
I'm still here.
Okay, good. Sorry, it was pausing. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're on. Okay.
Maybe
She
I was
was
just so intently staring at you that it just.
she she was so worried about saying the most offensive thing that it just got awkward. And I remember at one point I was just listening to her and I had to jump in to save her, because I was like, okay, you know what? That is really wonderful and I appreciate your efforts. Like, really just through with the fact that she was being awkward, and white people are going to have to get used to being awkward and
Yeah.
feeling awkward, because you know what? When I walk into a room of 500 white people,
Oh, oh no. Oh God, I love being live, guys. This is awesome.
hi. It's okay. You know what? We roll with it. So, I dated a guy from a small town. Went to visit him once. It's a town of 4,000 people. Everybody knew who I was before I'd even gotten there. So I went. I remember going to the grocery store and people like, "Hi, you must be Joanne," and I'm like, "Why must I be? Like, why must I be Joanne?" Sure, sure. Let's do it.
Probably had more time. But everyone, contact. We will be 1 minute. Come back on the live. We got to finish this really awesome convo.